Hey guys, welcome back to Style Over Substance with me, Scarlett.
And myself, Mim.
How you doing, Mim?
Yeah, I'm all right actually. I'm actually working on the bank holiday, so it's just like any other weekend for me. But I'm doing all right. Not bad, not bad. What about you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm actually also working
Are you?
babysitting on the
Oh,
bank
okay.
holiday. I've got a shift of 12 till 8 with a 6-year-old. Anyway, and also not a relative of mine, might I add, hence the tone. But yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. Yeah. Having a little pamper day. I've washed my hair, put some nice hair rolls in,
Oh,
moisturised my skin.
oh,
Yeah.
cool.
And also, I'm seeing you later.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was gonna say I'd actually like scrambled to wash my hair this morning because I knew I had to leave the house. So yeah, cool. Fashion story.
Fashion story. What is your fashion story this week?
So mine is the collaboration with Valentino and Levi Strauss, the denim company. We have seen massive collaborations come out in the past couple of weeks. Obviously,
Yeah. Gucci North Face, Balenciaga Gucci. Yeah.
So this is just another one. And it's basically these two brands have come together to kind of rework, and I say that in a loose way, rework the 517 or the 517 bootcut jeans. Now, these jeans are like kind of iconic. You know how Levi Strauss, they always have these like ranges or particular cuts that are like, have been worn for like decades and decades, like James Dean and Marlon Brando and all that lot. They all wear these and it's like quintessential cool. This is kind of, this pair of jeans has the same sort of legacy. And they were actually featured, the collaboration version was featured down Valentino's latest catwalk last year in Milan. Yeah.
And did we know that then?
Oh,
Maybe
well,
not.
I didn't. But then that's the thing, because Valentino is known for having like big gowns, bold colors, like drama, and we did see that their last show was quite casual in that there were denim, they were wearing jeans and trainers and stuff down the runway. So that, although that was different to me, it didn't actually spur me to be like, oh, what's going on with these jeans? I just assumed Valentino were making jeans now because we were at home and everyone was wearing casual things, and it just kind of made sense. And it's probably from that same sort of logic that they have decided to do this collaboration. So yeah, what's interesting about them is that there's only going to be 517 pieces available worldwide.
Like
so it's super limited, and obviously it's the number of the cut. It's a boot cut for those out there who don't like boot cuts. That's why they probably only made
That's why they only need 500.
So and each pair takes the form of this vintage unaltered original. So I think we're getting the same shape and style that has been around for a long time, but they've been upcycled. So these actual pairs that you're buying have been previously worn, but they've been upcycled. So I'm guessing like the hardware on the jeans maybe have had a Valentino spin, or from the pictures I can see, it seems like any other pair of jeans. I'm not going to lie, but they do have a patch on the back which says, Valentino, Levi, and they've been previously worn. So I mean, it touches on this
is
whole
that
move.
a collab? Like, is it then?
I don't know. I mean, we've seen Balenciaga get away with a lot. So
yeah,
anything goes, really. I don't know if it is a collab.
I think it's more, it's an upcycle project, but I don't know if I would call it, a collab if they haven't sort of designed it together,
Yeah, but then when someone puts their name next to someone else's,
I guess that is the essence of a collaboration.
Yeah. And the idea of it being previously worn upcycled pieces makes me think that, you know how denim back in the day was raw denim, we've spoken about this before, really stiff material, and you had to break it in.
Yeah.
I think that's why, you know, nowadays we're used to soft denim. I think that's why they've decided to stick with already beaten in kind of pairs of jeans for that modern comfort, but with that like old school style. Don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's a cheeky one, isn't it? Because it's like they've got these ones for £650 on Mr. Porter. It's a lot of money for a pair of jeans, which I don't know what they've done to them.
That is a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. So what's your story?
So my story is another, I guess, form of a collaboration or a partnership. So Chanel and Cambridge University have partnered basically to focus on education, innovation, and research. So it's basically to help Chanel's roadmap to sustainability. And this is kind of like, I would say it's very surprising in a few areas. First of all, Chanel is French. So why they haven't gone to the Sorbonne, which is an equally very reputable university in Paris. Yeah, I find it quite weird. I guess maybe Cambridge is much more pioneering in that aspect. It's like the university part they're collaborating with is the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. Sissel. So yeah, I think that's surprising that it's in the UK, but I also think what a really cool thing to do to make your steps towards sustainability so open, so like I don't know, you're celebrating it, you're showing what you're doing, your steps there, you're leading sort of. I've never heard of any fashion group show that they're caring or have this much incentive for sustainability and all of that stuff. I think that's really important that they're sort of like, you know, making a real moment and like highlighting it, because a lot of people maybe don't want to bring attention to it because you can then face backlash or hear that you're actually not doing things so well.
Yeah. If you as a brand say this is what we're aiming for and these are our targets and this is what we stand for and strive for, you're always going to be measured against that aspiration, and you can fall short of that. But Chanel has been notoriously private about everything really that they do, so I doubt that we're really going to ever hear statements about how it's going, you know. But it is interesting. I mean, I wonder in what sort of meaningful way this will bring about a change or a new culture at Chanel and what they plan on doing. I don't know, but it has reminded me of Hermès investing in new types of leathers, something that we want to do an episode on in terms of vegan leathers and alternative leathers. But yeah, it's good to see these big houses, the most like prestigious houses, kind of reevaluate what they're doing. But on the same time, we know that there are systemic failures from production right up until like head office where a lot of wastage happens.
I mean, a company I used to work for didn't recycle paper, you know?
Oh yeah, that's that's entry level, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's something where like, well, don't say, oh, we shouldn't use fur and crocodile to be more sustainable. It's like, babe, recycle. Like, actually just recycle your paper, because the amount of paper wastage there is of printing out, obviously, like line sheets, just like multiple versions of a design. Like at one point we would have to print out a version of every bag and every colorway for them to see and decide it. Yeah. And obviously then like none of that's being recycled. But yeah, I think sustainable has to just start from the beginning. Like we've talked about, I think before, the excessive packaging that comes with a bag, and it's to protect the bag, but you know, we once lived in a world without plastic. Maybe it should resort back to paper, which is much easier to recycle and, you know, break back down again. So yeah.
100%. I think there is a way for high-end luxury to be really sustainable. I mean, Hermes at its core, I mean, we could talk a lot about Hermes, but the fact that they make things in such small runs and that wait time and that long lead time, and you investing in a piece is really at the core of sustainability. It's not necessarily...
Yeah, their business plan is essentially sustainable, and it's only the super wealthy who've made it more gluttonous with Hermes. I guess the idea of Hermes is you only really own one, maybe two.
They limit they limit the number of Kellys and Birkins you can buy a year.
Yeah.
I've seen videos of people like, you only have an allowance of 2. Yeah. So you've got to choose carefully.
Yeah, you can't just...
great problem to have.
I can only buy 2 Kelly bags this year.
We interrupt this broadcast to remind you, go follow us on Instagram, Style Over Substance Pod. Shoot us an email, styleoversubstancepeak@gmail.com. Find us on YouTube, find us on Twitter. We've got all the links on our Instagram. You know what to do.
Okay, so this week we are following on from our intern conversation last week, and we're going to get a bit more personal. And we also want to say thank you to you guys who replied to us on Instagram about if you had any intern stories or how you feel about the fact that a lot of the time internships are for free. And so most people have sort of commented that it's difficult because people can't afford to work for free. Mm-hmm. And so that's really like the main challenge, that, as we spoke about last week, that like it then really limits who these opportunities are available to. One person replied saying that they would if they got something really beneficial out of it or thought that it could knock on to work and stuff like that. But yeah, it was really nice hearing from you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I think in the world of work, there's always going to be this, like, I need to take a risk and just go for it and see where this leads me. And if they're not paying me, like, yeah, that sucks for me. But I could actually make this beneficial for me in other ways, and one of them not being monetarily. So there is that argument. And I always think, like, sometimes when you're offered opportunities, you just go for it. And if you don't like it, you just leave, you know?
And also if someone's not paying you, like, as much as you can try and have some like agreement of, oh, I have to give you notice, you know,
not really.
Like, if someone's not paying you, you obviously don't want to burn bridges, especially in an industry that's small, but there's also they're not paying you.
Yeah, exactly. You're not like, oh, I don't want to not get paid for the weeks I've already done. If they want to retaliate, if they're that sort of people. But yeah, I agree. Like, 2021 times are tough. Why in the world should any of us be working for free in many cases when the company is selling bags and clothes for thousands of pounds and they are making a profit? There are a lot of fashion houses which are smaller and do struggle. I'm not pretending that at all. But it's like, if you were a small business owner and you wanted someone to come and work for you, you'd have to pay them something. You'd have to make an effort, whether it's you buying them lunch every day or giving them a lift to the train station or something. You would do your best to kind of accommodate them and help them for scratching your back. And I really think that just having worked in the industry, it's so much of an industry that's like, loads of people want to work for that brand or that company. So many people do. And I think we both fell prey of this belief as well, that it's okay if they don't pay you a lot, because you're not used to being paid a lot in that industry, and you just accept it for what it is. You could be doing something very similar in another industry and be paid like double, for example. And it's that belief that I think glues everything together. Kids will work for nothing because they want to be in the in crowd. They want to be working at these Valentinos, at these Chanels, at these whatever.
They want to get their foot in the door.
Yeah, and that's what fuels it. And it's a myth in a sense. I think, having worked in luxury fashion, and don't get me wrong, like we talk about all the time, I love luxury fashion. I buy into it. I love watching it. I love all its like frivolities and all of that, and how utterly useless it already is. It's clothes, but it is fun, and I love that about it. But don't yourself fall prey to the idea that it's the end all and be all. You know, I think
know your worth. I think it's that, and you don't want to be egotistical or anything like that. You can't walk through the door and think you're better than a company, but you also have to remember, like, you are worth a wage. You're worth a certain amount, whether that is the price of your rent or all of your expenses. Like, that is then what you're worth, because you have to earn that to make your ends meet and stuff like that, I think. But yeah.
So this week we thought we'd carry on from that, from last week's episode, and kind of have more of a story time, because we haven't had a story time in a long time, and talk about in like the grittiness of what your experiences were of your internships, what people can expect whilst they're actually doing it, what advice you would give people in terms of getting one, in terms of how to conduct yourself on like a work placement, and after your internships, what's like the next steps, and give people a bit of perspective on the real ins and out day-to-days of an internship, basically.
Yeah. I mean, my internships are very much varied. So the first one that I had, the company was relatively small. I think when I joined, it had maybe 8 people working there.
Okay.
And so my internship was essentially helping every department and being a general intern.
So what was your title? And are internships, are you given titles, or are you just like an office helper in a sense?
So I didn't, my title was essentially intern. So my like email address was intern at. And yeah, I think, but in other places you would be like the design intern or the PR intern or the merch intern, like or whatever, or production intern and stuff like that. But because it was a really small team, but yeah, I was just like the intern. And so I was taking over. There was like a week crossover where there was another girl who was interning there. And I think she'd been like their longest intern, because she'd be maybe like there for like 2 or 3 months. And that was like a really big deal for them.
Oh, God. I thought you were going to say 2 or 3 years.
No. And so we had like a week crossover where she sort of showed me the ropes a bit. But then I was about to be their longest one, that I think I'd signed on to like 6 months there, because basically part of my degree was to get in a year in industry. And you had to have a certain number of hours of interning to like pass that year essentially. So yeah, I'd like was really frantic to try and get this internship. If I like take it back to like, I really was aware of like, I wanted to have an internship to start in like the September or like before summer ended, because we only had like a certain amount of time to obviously get this internship sort of quota done. And I was like really frantically trying to find one. Our uni had a database of previous internships, but I was also kind of like really naive, thinking, no, I'm gonna like email Burberry, I'm gonna like I'm just gonna do that, I'm gonna like go for the brands that I've heard of, which actually obviously like is near impossible even to find a way to contact them.
Yeah, that's like that's a bad strategy. Even with jobs, you're like, yeah, I can work at I don't know, Chanel, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you realize it's no.
So yeah, I think I started then trying to find listings on like different fashion websites. I think they've changed probably now. But I mean, BOF does post sometimes about internships. But also you can go on brands' websites often and see their jobs listing and stuff. But I was really struggling. I sent out so many emails and I was just not getting much back, because also like it wasn't just my uni that offers this, like the entire sort of, you know, class year of fashion students is all trying to do the same thing essentially. And so I started going on the database of my uni, and basically anything I liked, even the vague sound of, I was just emailing. I'd never heard of this brand, but someone had previously gone there and I was like, yeah, like whatever, I'm just gonna have to do it. Liked the look of their style of things online.
Go on. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say they were one of the few people who actually replied to me. So that's another thing I was going to point out of, like, in fashion, you just have to realize people will not reply to your applications.
I think that's the case for every industry.
Yeah.
That recruitment is really dodgy. But when
it's high volume, I think as well, like it is in fashion.
Yeah. In a world where like you did design, so in an area or space where it's very visual, how did you stand out in terms of your application? Because emailing is one thing. Your emails can get lost. People can easily gloss over these emails. And also you want to show that you're capable in the world of design to some extent, because that's what you were going for. How do you like suggest people try and, I don't know, increase their chances of being noticed?
So often now it would be that, I don't think it was so much of a thing then that you would show like, or maybe I did, maybe you often have like 5 pages, like a little PDF of like an example of your work that you attach maybe with your CV in your sort of application essentially. My big thing, but this is my personal preference, is I actually don't like a jazzy CV. I really like detest that. But that's my personal preference. I don't want to see that you're like good at graphic design in your CV. I just think you just want to read a CV, you know,
like last year when we were all in lockdown and people were struggling to get jobs, did you see all those like intern kids on, like, I don't know if you saw this, but on LinkedIn, I would see these kids who are in uni or coming out of uni looking for internships and jobs, and they would do the wildest CVs. And they would redesign it. Like, for example, there was this girl, I remember, and she was going into PR or marketing, something like that. And she redesigned her CV to look like Pretty Little Things Instagram.
Oh,
it was, I mean, kudos to her, because that is, if I were the recruitment manager, I would be so impressed. But yeah, I think maybe we're just in a time where you need to be pushing the boat out or putting something at least eye-catching.
I think if you're applying for graphics design, I think it's really great. And obviously it could be different than just a Word document, and it can look a bit sleeker, especially if you are sort of showing that you kind of have an eye for things looking nice. But I think people just tend to like make it all bells and whistles, and I just think essentially we just want to read information about you. It needs to be really coherent, like but that's also just from my preference of when I've looked at applications, that sometimes people have clearly put like more effort into their CV, but like their experience isn't even there. So like,
I see.
You can't hide that. But yeah, so I would say just to put like together, a little snippet of your work. Nowadays, lots of people, I guess, have like a little online space that you can preview and show projects from your uni staff or anything else like that. And then I had to take a portfolio with me to get my fashion internship. And I feel like it's that thing of like, at this internship, did I design anything once? No. So why I'm having... in hindsight, to bring like my portfolio with me, like talk through my work, made it feel like the guy who interviewed me, I'm still sort of in touch with, bless him, like he made it seem so important. And essentially the day-to-day stuff I did was nothing to do with design. So like, it's that hindsight of, I get it, there's got to be a way you decide things, but I don't think they were interviewing anyone else. Like, it's sort of that thing of,
that's a bit disappointing.
Yeah. But then also I've worked places where you really do design in a design internship, and then that's really fair and relevant. But I would say my first experience of an internship, I was essentially the office lackey. Like, I helped with certain things, but it would be the case of, for production, the way I would help would be counting out buttons. So because stuff was so small, we would send the exact correct number of buttons to the factory. So there wasn't for production. So I'd be counting out like 40 buttons or whatever, and then you give like a surplus for like error, and if they lost one or dropped one, whatever. So like, that's what I was helping with, or like measuring out the fabric, making sure they've got enough, stuff like that. I definitely helped the pattern cutter. That was maybe the main experience of design, or like stuff that was relevant. I helped the pattern cutter. But other than that, it was a lot of coffees, getting lunches. Design wise, it was more like the way I helped the design team was sending T&Ts out, like deliveries out, DPD, whatever it is. And yeah, it was a lot of like, if there was nothing to do, tidy the office, like kind of, that kind of a vibe. And like, I am a good worker, I am fine, but if you make up a job for me, like just tidy the office, I'm not pleased. Like, I remember once just having to like sort through these boxes of like old materials and just being like, this is a made up job, and I don't do well with a made up job. Like, when I know there's not like a reason, and you've just found something for me to pass time, like, I'm not gonna want to then ask you again when I haven't got anything to do. But yeah, it was very lackey.
That's annoying, because to me, if I were 18, or not even 18, you're a bit older than that, like 21, 20, something like that. Like, I don't mind doing menial jobs. I don't mind counting buttons.
No, like, if you get in the headspace of that, it's absolutely fine, because someone's got to do it.
You're still in the area of design. You're still within the team. You're still overhearing conversations and getting to grips with terminology, and just being in that environment, I think, is the most worthwhile part of it, even if you're doing a silly little job, because everyone at some point has to do those jobs, to make something happen. But when it comes to just tidying up the office, that isn't and also like, and I don't mean this in a rude way, like, I'm sure at some point, like, I may end up being a cleaner, who knows, but I'm also not there to be the cleaner, like, I'm actually there to learn. And if I wanted to learn about cleaning, I can clean my room at home. Like, but yeah, and there were definitely times where I think I mentioned maybe last week, like, I was out of the office sometimes more than I was in it. There would be days. And so basically with my uni, I had to keep a track and a log of everything I did, because we were meant to like write up our internships afterwards, and keep like an intern diary. And so I sort of like would always just write down roughly what I did. And so much of what I would do would be collecting fabric from a shop and bringing it back. And like, I just have these memories of being on the underground with this ginormous roll of fabric, the heat, it was a hot summer, and just like sweating. And like, they're telling you like, we need this back by the time TNT comes, like, and he comes at 4:00, like, you need to be back by then, and it's like somewhat impossible, so you're running, like, and then you're having to negotiate the underground with a couple of rolls of fabric, and then like walking back, and of course they're not paying for a taxi for you, and things like that. And also like, they were lucky again that like I didn't need like I didn't use an Oyster card. My parents live in Zone 6, that's not a thing. So I had at least like a travel card. But again, like, that would have then been like on my Oyster card, all like the tappings. I see. Okay, so that's another issue, because there's one thing to have like bullshit jobs, and there's another thing to
The incur cost.
Incur additional costs. We're not talking about transport to get to work.
Yeah.
We're not talking about your lunch to sustain you in the day. We're talking like this is stuff that should be budgeted into their accounts. How are they going to create something if they don't account for the transport costs of this item, the fees that might incur, just like, yeah, that's all part of running a business, and that's not an expense that should be put onto the person who is not getting paid. I mean, even if I were getting paid, that would still not be okay.
Yeah, I know. And like, and it's terrible. So they were really lucky that I did have this travel card, because it also, there was a real thrill of excitement of, okay, so they take this thing that's made here and you take it there and you see where the factories are based. Like I literally would be taking fabric to the office, we'd measure it out, then I'd take it to the factory, then like with the buttons and all this stuff that I've measured out, like my day would just be stuff like that, go into the platers and like where things would be gold plated or like whatever it was, and where the hardware gets made, all of that stuff. So that's interesting to know where you can find those things. But once you've done that once or twice, like it's less interesting, and you're essentially a courier service. Like I might as well work for like Amazon, you know. So there was a lot of that, and then there were just like the things that were outright not relevant to fashion and were just like outrageous. So for instance, there was an office dog. I would have to go pick up his dog food from the pet shop, and to carry back these 2 big heavy bags of like dog food for him. I once had to just go pay for her MOT down the road.
You are joking me.
I would have to like go and pay. And obviously then also like, I'm like having to like impersonate her in a bank maybe to like do certain
She's
exchanges.
got you committing fraud.
No, I mean, it wasn't fraud, but you know, like paying in stuff that like I shouldn't be paying in because it's like going into her account. I've got like a hierarchy of what I think some of the worst jobs that I've had to do are. And one is that like a few of the girls in the office had mastitis.
What's that?
It's like a urine infection, often caused from like rumpy pumpy. I had to go get them some medicine.
Phrasing of that.
No, it's not mastitis, it's cystitis.
Oh, cystitis. Okay.
Lol. I had to go get cystitis medicine for the office. So I'm going looking like a thirsty girl, having to get 2 sachets, like, or 2 boxes of cystitis medicine, really for the office. So that I felt like was like a bit inappropriate, especially when I say the pharmacy was less than like 200 yards from the front door of our office.
What?
And again, like, so I would get my boss's prescription for her. I once had to go get the contraceptive pill for my boss she ordered it from like Selfridges. Selfridges pharmacy. I was like, I'm not being funny, you don't even live there. Why would you get your pill from there?
That's more awkward to get it from there than it
my
is,
god.
Like,
so yeah, I had to go do that. I once also, she was like having to work or like late or something, so I had to go to her flat and feed her cat for her. And just like once had to receive some artwork that she had delivered to her flat, so because she couldn't leave the office. Like all of these things, you're like,
what?
Absolutely just not your personal assistant. And like when I say it's like, it wasn't super local, like I had to get a bus to get there, like to do all this stuff, like, and also again, I'm meant to be learning, I'm meant to be getting experience, but if I'm going there to get your art delivered to your house, like I don't know how relevant that is.
And what that makes me think is you're spending the best part of this year in industry not learning about the industry, which is, you're not just there to earn credits for your uni degree. You're there because when you leave, you're there to evaluate whether this is a career that you want to stick with and what skills you want to take from it and either continue in the same industry or maybe do something slightly different. And then once you leave uni, say you do want to stick with this industry, you're going to go into a job not knowing
how to do it.
that they would expect you to know because they can see you've got 2 or 3 internships under your belt, when really you've got 2 personal assistant internships under your belt. And that's embarrassing for you,
everyone
in a sense,
involved.
For everyone, for everyone involved, because I would think, like, judging from what you've told me, I would be thinking the unis should see your write-up of your experience and be like, let's not put them on our like roster of suggested internships or available internships for the next cohort of kids, because this isn't what we're not here to be a pipeline of students into like someone who will feed your cat when you're not at home. We're trying to like better our students who are paying for our guidance and our help on this course.
For sure. And I think actually the sad thing is that, first of all, these people weren't much older than me. They're probably the age we are now, if maybe not younger. So they hadn't had like 30 years experience, or like, you know, and they're so busy and they've like really earned their stripes and they're like up there, and they've got a family at home that they have to get back to, and like they're there to like, you know, it's not that even that is a justification for someone to be your lackey, but like there wasn't even that. They weren't super like much older than me to like really have that level of like, oh yeah, you've earned your stripes, like, yeah. But it was almost like, and weirdly they hadn't really worked in other places, but like it was like they just know that they can get away with it, you know. And I really begrudged that, of like, Budgeons is around the corner, you can spare 2 minutes and walk and get yourself your Diet Coke yourself, like, or actually maybe you need a personal assistant if this is the kind of thing you want being done, because I haven't applied to be your personal assistant. I've applied for a design internship, essentially.
Do you think it inflated their ego?
For sure. For sure. Like that, like their attitude stunk for a really long time, that they thought they were really self-important, that they had this person who, by the way, like they didn't learn my name to begin with, and I wasn't allowed to approach them myself as the intern. So I'm allowed to go get your contraceptive pill, but the way you ask for me to go and get it is you ask someone that you actually employ and pay and go, can she go and get this? And I can overhear you referring to me as she, and you haven't taken the time to learn my name. But also I'm not then allowed to give it to you. I have to give it to that person who then gives it to you, because I'm not important enough to take up your time. And that's the kind, and even there'll be times of like, they'd go into a room and they're designing and no one's allowed to knock on the door because you don't want to interrupt like
the process
and disrupt. But it's like, but you've also asked me to make you a cup of tea and go and get your lunch. And if I leave it like, and there was this real fear, I remember I'd have to like go and do a bit of shopping or get stuff for their lunches. And I had this real fear of like, they didn't have Hovis multigrain, like, sorry, Hovis multigrain, like, but they have like wholemeal, like, is that okay? And I'd genuinely be like ringing up to check that like they don't have this, but like they have this. And it's like, no, I should have just got the closest thing I could get. Like, but there's this, they feed this thing that's very like Meryl Streep, Devil Wears Prada, where you are sort of like, yeah, I will do that. And I remember my boss would go to like events, and when I say boss, it's like the top, I'm saying like the top dog, would be going to events, and they'd ask me to like iron her clothes, and the fear I would get of ironing her clothes because they've got to be like it's different than me ironing my own. They've got to be pristine. And like, also, no one's taught me how to iron like clothes properly, you know. I don't know how to get that perfect like fold line if it's that kind of a trouser, and like that's not what you learn at like uni. And even like you don't even learn the proper way to sew on a button, you know. You just sew it on. I don't know, like there is a correct way to sew on a button, which I've now learned, but like you don't learn that stuff. You're not like in a 1950s high school of like women learning these skills. And I used to be terrified every time I had to like fix something for her and like all of this stuff. I remember I had to go buy her a bra had to head to like Selfridges to buy her a strapless bra for an event. I just remember thinking like,
oh my God, was I working there at that time?
no, you weren't. But like, I just remember thinking like, this is mental. Like, you actually aren't that busy. And I think it's more, people like to think that they're busier than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also like, for context, like this was obviously about 9 years ago, where like our life wasn't so instant. We didn't have like Amazon next day delivery and all of that stuff then.
Yep.
So to expect this sort of like fast-paced life that now I understand that Amazon's created, because you can get away with like thinking that there is no time, and you get annoyed if your package is a day late.
Mm-hmm.
But we weren't living in a time of like that kind of a thing, but they just thought that like they just didn't have a spare second. Oh my God.
Yeah, it feeds into that self-importance, that hierarchy, and that glamorization of, I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely a stereotype that like fashion holds within itself. But just personally, if I were like the director of something or head of something or VP, I am not trusting anyone to pick up my lunch that I don't know. I don't know this girl. She's not picking up my food. She's not picking up my pill. She's not picking up like personal stuff that I'm going to eat or consume.
I'd also be mortified.
Yeah. I don't understand.
Why do you need to know my bra size? You know, like,
it's
like
weird.
It's all that stuff. Like, I would be mortified.
Sometimes people do that. It's definitely, from what I see, people do that as a form of intimidation. It's to make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, definitely. And also I think you're then like being mollycoddled by like, when people succumb to it. And also like, yeah, they would just sort of, everyone would speak of like this essence of like, oh, you know, like, oh, we need to make sure she eats and stuff. It's like, yeah, like me too. Like I need to eat too. Like we all need to eat, you know, like it's this real stupidity of like, I find that really bizarre. I don't think anyone's ever too busy to not be able to get themselves lunch.
Yeah, she was like the queen bee of the beehive.
Because you've either got enough money that you can order yourself a Deliveroo or whatever, or you can nip to Budgeons or Tesco, whatever, and get something like we all do, or you know, you bring it in from home.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that exists. Making your sandwiches at home. So what was one of your best experiences where you felt like this experience is fulfilling to me and that I'm walking away with something useful?
So it started to get more fulfilling. I really enjoyed doing the pattern cutting. I really felt, so pattern cutting is like how, basically, if you think all the parts that basically make up a garment, you design the shape of them, the length of them, the cut of them, how it's going to be sewn and all of that stuff. And it's all designed flat. So I loved that. I loved learning from the woman that was there. She used to work for Alexander McQueen. And so like the pattern cutting skills that are required there are like top notch. And I remember thinking it was incredible. And then eventually I got to like work a lot more on like making like mock-ups, like paper mock-ups of bags where you like just use some like tape and glue or whatever, and you like try and make it look like the bag, and you send it to factories, and getting more involved in that, and maybe helping every now and then on like the computer stuff, and feeling like it was more of an internship. When it turned into being less of like a delivery person, it felt really rewarding. And it doesn't take much, especially when you're doing those jobs, to feel like your job is rewarding.
Yeah.
And doing that stuff. So I loved that. And then also like I went back once I'd been there for a long time and they trusted me to sort of be able to do more things. I then went back like after my other internship ended, and then it became my job. So like more for me. But like, yeah, I don't know. I think the problem is that culture makes you feel like you're so special to be there. And you look at, and I don't know if I'll ever not look at the person who's like either the name of the company or like the creative director without being like, it's you. It's them.
It's the celebrity.
And like you want to stare at them when they walk in the room, or like that they're the celebrity of the company. They're like, you want to be like, oh my God.
Yeah. No, I remember in one of my last jobs, the CEO came over from the States, and it was like, and they would walk around the office when they were there, but obviously they used to have like a couple of their guys with them. Not in an intimidating way, because our office in the UK wasn't big at all. But you would be like, oh,
yeah.
And we'd have these, what we'd call town halls, where they would kind of give us the forecasting and projections and past performance of like the last quarter. And they would be up on the stage and you'd be like, it's him.
Yeah. And like, there's something really special about that. And I kind of think there's something really lovely that like, they're on a pedestal, and it's like, oh, but then it's also pathetic.
They're in the media as well, aren't they? Like,
yeah, there's a reason why it sort of happens. They're the face of the company and all of that stuff, so it's natural. But also, it's still a person.
Yes,
you know? They still eat, sleep, and poop. You know, like there's no avoiding that. But yeah, so like it's difficult. And then so my second internship was a complete 180. It was involved more in like the knitwear and stuff, that kind of side of things. And so I was doing a lot of making. It wasn't at all menial tasks. I never sort of maybe once or twice I left to go and do an errand, but really barely like ever. Most of the time I was sat around a table crocheting or knitting. And that was just those. Day in, day out. And that kind of atmosphere, like I was learning a lot. I'd never really done much knitting and really liked it, but there were like maybe 5 of us around a table, and that was like the intern zone, and then there were like 4 people working in the office, and they would have, like, one of them would have instructed us on what to do. There was like one person who dealt with us, and that was it. And we weren't really allowed to talk, and so you're just sat there essentially being like the sweatshop maker of things. Like for however long days, they were really long days, like on a stool, like genuinely not a comfortable chair, in this like bright light room, and you just would just be like there all day. So I got really into like desert island discs during that time, because I was like, if we can't talk, or every time we get a little like chat on, someone's gonna be like, shh, I'm not going to talk. Like, I'm that kind of a person of like, you've annoyed me now, so I won't talk, because I don't want to keep getting like annoyed or feel like I'm not allowed to talk. But it was just, that was very different. And I'm actually amazed I did that for like nearly 6 months as well. I don't know how I did that, because actually they didn't even cover my travel. And before the show, we would have to work weekends too. And I would be getting home at whatever time and I was still living at home. I would barely see my parents, and I'd just get up and do it all again, just to sit and crochet in a corner.
Oh, well.
And this was a company where like they couldn't have done it without the interns. And it's a very different vibe of like, they weren't making us get their lunches and stuff like that. I mean, maybe every now and then people did that, but like it was just more like, you should be paying us. We're actually making things for you. And it was much more educational, but it also very much felt like a sweatshop in essence. But then you get the thrill of a show, and you're there, and that all goes out the window, like when you're like backstage at a fashion show. But yeah, I like, it's educational, but when you think you've got 5 of us, and when it was near showtime it'd be like 10, all crammed around on these little like poxy stools. We're all trying to do like just get stuff done. And I think it's very bizarre, like very bizarre. So
I want to ask you about, after you'd finished your degree and everything, how much do you think these internship experiences, for the very least on paper, how much they helped you or didn't help you?
So they helped me in the sense that I had a job waiting for me when I finished uni.
Okay.
So I went into my final year knowing I had a job to go to, which was a really fortunate position that not many people have. But did it prepare me for a job in fashion, the internships? No. What I guess it prepares me for was more, I knew the team I was going into, so I wasn't sort of daunted. But the problem is, and I really think that this is maybe a problem in like all industries. If a company has seen you as an intern, they will always see you as an intern.
Oh, that's such a good point.
I just think like whenever I would go up sort of any of the ranks, I think they always wanted to like quash maybe me being promoted or anything like that because they knew where I started. But actually, like, yeah, you don't know what I'm doing somewhere else, but like because I've come from somewhere else, you trust in my experience way more. And yeah, I think I always was then like the person to be like, oh, Scarlett knows that. Oh, Scarlett can help with that. And I always sort of felt like I never really got to shift. And also you never shift it in yourself. That person of like, am I still the person who makes teas? Like I remember writing a handover for someone who was going to be, I was about to get a paid position and we were going to get an intern in, and I wrote like handover notes and I wrote her like a little guide and I wrote down how everyone in the company took their tea as like a tip for her. And like in hindsight, I'm like, that's disgusting. That's disgusting. Because I'm a big believer that I don't think one person should be making the tea in the company, whether they're an intern or not. Like, and I know people's time are more valuable, but you're not too busy to make yourself a cup of tea.
Or at least expect that the intern will make it. It's nice if, you know, one day I make yours, next day mine, stuff like that.
And someone does around and they make a few.
And,
like,
and some people never, like some people are genuinely swept off their feet and they can't make it, for example. But to be like, it's very Mad Men where it was, you know, you were the secretary and it was like, make sure your skirt hits your knee and make sure you do this and that. And this is like, if you want to survive here,
this is how you survive. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah. And actually, like, I hate like hearing that I did that actually, because imagine walking in and seeing that and just being like, right.
Yeah. What is she saying about you? She must have gone home and be like, oh, bitch.
Told me how everyone takes their tea.
I'm going to take everyone's tea. Yeah. Oh, but that's the thing. Like, we all perpetuate to a degree. We perpetuate and we normalize what we experience. So if we are, as we'd mentioned last week, if in our head offices we are having people who are making the garments and not getting paid, or being treated a certain way, or taken advantage of, literally, monetarily, and with their time and their skill, how can we expect that further down the line in supply chain when it comes to fashion, that people in another country who are genuinely poorer than us are going to get treated any better? Like, it's part and parcel, I think, of the same problem. And
it is. It really is. And like you said, I'm then giving the jobs to her that I know I hated. And that doesn't mean that that's okay. And was I doing anything to prevent her having to do them? No. But was I in a position to do that? Also, probably not. But you
thought you were doing
really
her a
tough.
favor.
I thought I was doing her a favor by giving her more of a hand or a heads up to the type of stuff to expect. But like, it's that horrible thing of even in an interview where you're like, you know, so you'll be helping out and you'll be helping X with, you know, getting her lunch, you know, she's really important that we make sure she's looked after, like type of a vibe. And it's like, this girl wants to be a fashion designer. She doesn't want to be a PA. She doesn't want to be a babysitter for somebody. And I was really also fortunate because I lived in Zone 6. I had the excuse that I had to leave by, I think it was like 11 at night, to get the last train home, because they didn't want to pay for like me to get a taxi home. And then in time they started doing that when they were doing a bit better, and then they had to stop again because we were spending too much money on Ubers, which tells you how late we were always staying and having to get food. But also, like, so a really good example I've got of where like the chain needs to get broken. It's like with anything. It's like with racism, sexism, any form of like treating people differently. If you continue the way that people did it previously, we're never going to improve. You have to break a chain. And this is much more minor than racism, by the way. Yeah. But like, it's that thing of like, just because your boss treated you that way doesn't mean that like you should treat me this way, because otherwise we're never going to change. We're never going to evolve. And like, times have changed. We're much more aware of the way we should be treated. And I remember I was working and we got like this last minute project in for a private client, had to design it and all of that stuff. So I did that. And like, I would normally finish at 6 o'clock. And that day I had a concert to go to. And then it got to like 7 o'clock. I finished the project, but I said to my boss, I was like, I'm really sorry. Like, I've got to go now. I've got a concert to go to. And like, this is 7 o'clock at night. You technically aren't paying me now. Like, I'm really sorry. Like, I've got to go now. And she was just like, and just looked at me like, and shrugged. And she was just like, well, you know, we've got to get this done. And I was like, well, we have. And actually also in hindsight, I realized that like, so at this company, once you did the work, someone's actual physical job was to put it in a professional presentation. And they had gone home. So it was never going to be done that evening. But she had like convinced herself it had to be done that evening and be done. And so then, because that guy had gone home, she made me put it in the professional presentation. But in hindsight, I also know that like, that's not the way the company works. You wait till that guy's in. Like, he knows the right font. He knows the professional layout to do it in. And I also thought like, it's very rare that like, you know, I don't go to a concert like every night of the week. This is a real one-off. I've spent money on this. I was like, I've got someone waiting for me. I'm not going to this concert alone. So you're now in like making someone else's time like irrelevant. And she sort of just shrugged at me. And so I like had my coat on as well when I'd like asked her this. So I just sit down, I kept my coat on. I was so livid. Yeah. I just thought, and also I wasn't an intern then, but still, I don't think that matters. And I was so angry because I just knew that like I was having to message my friend to be like, I'm really sorry, I'm going to be a bit later. And like, I know concerts don't start at like 8 o'clock. But like we'd planned to make an evening of it. Exactly. And she's already there waiting. So she's now got to sit by herself until I get there. Which is really rude, like, and not fun for her either. So yeah, so then like I finish it and I basically am just like, I'm really sorry, I've got to go now type of a thing, when it's already like another 40 minutes has passed. So I leave and like, weirdly also I was going to the same concert the next night, which I didn't want to tell her, and I was taking my mum for Mother's Day. And I said to her, I walked in that day and I was like, I've got like a plan with my mum, I have to leave on time like today. I was like, you're not making me keep my mum waiting type of a thing. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, I know what it's like, you know, to have to run into a concert halfway through. I've had to do that before. Or like, you know, I know what it's like to have to miss out on plans. And I just thought, that's not a good enough excuse just because you've had to do it. Yeah. And that job wasn't actually that important. You were able to make that executive decision and you didn't. But she was terrified because she clearly had a boss that made her terrified, and she was always that person. And again, like I think her husband worked late, so she would never really leave work until 8 o'clock because that's when her husband clocked off. And I was like, but that's not my problem. Like, it's a one-off plan. It's not like I'm telling you I want to go home because I'm tired. And she once also made this intern, I think she was really not feeling well, and she was like, do you mind if I go home now? Like, and she's like, well, you know, that's up to you. And this intern English wasn't her first language, she was Italian. And she sort of looked at me, she's like, what does she mean? And I was like, and she's like, you know, it's up to you what kind of an employee you want to be, really. Do you want to stay and do some more options of what you're working on and leave before your boss? Or, you know, you can go home and you know, you can be that person. And being really like playing this mind game. I was like, first of all, I don't know if she understands the mind game you're playing because she's not English. But also like, we don't pay her.
Yeah.
She can go home. And do you know how hard that is to ask someone to go home and then you don't even get a definitive answer?
Yeah.
And I remember watching this exchange, and then the girl started crying and my boss walked off. And I was like, I hate this industry so much. You can't do that to somebody. You either say yes or no. You can't go, it's up to you, you know? Oh, I just hate it. I hate it. Oh my God. I'm having flashbacks.
Well, on that note, this was a good chat. This was really insightful. Some of these stories I had never heard before.
I would definitely love to hear if other people have interning stories. And also this, like, as a disclaimer, I'm not trying to like cuss out places I've worked for. Like, these are genuine experiences I've had. And I more just want to give a full picture of like, it's not all like learning to be a fashion designer. There's a reason fashion has this name, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And I promise I'm a good employee. Just don't cross me.
I don't think anyone who listens to our podcast yet is going to be hiring us anytime.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Chanel, if you're listening.
Oh God, yeah, it would be really good to hear anyone's personal stories,
and even if it's not in fashion, you know.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I'm sure we've all been wronged in industries.
It'd be good to compare. I think compare the nature of internships across different industries and whatever. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. We're going to put a poll out for this, so please respond, and we'll share all your responses to the wider like group and audience. But we'll see you next week, I suppose. Bye, guys.
Toodles.